The benefits of a series of trades perspective. You know exactly what behaviors serve your purpose and what behaviors do not. You cannot trade in a series of trades perspective with a trading plan and not know exactly what behaviors will serve your purpose and what behaviors will not. Because everything's planned out. You're either following your plan or you're not. But the point is, everything is planned. You are not picking individual trades, therefore, no one trade has any more or any less significance than the other. The next trade, this trade, they're all just trades. None of them have any more or any less significance. You will gain a sense of freedom to flow in and out of your trades without conflict because you are not living or dying on the outcome of any particular trade. By reducing the number of variables, you will be learning what works and what doesn't. By truly accepting that the outcome of this trade could be different than whatever happened the last time, you are positively managing your expectations. Now think about what I just said. By truly accepting. What does it mean to truly accept? It means that there's no other part of your identity or consciousness that is in conflict with accepting the fact, genuinely accepting the fact, that this trade could have a different outcome than the last one. If the last trade was a winner, it means that this trade could have a different outcome. It could be a loser. If the last trade was a loser, it means that this trade could have a different outcome. It could be a winner. You see, our minds don't feel like there's anything wrong with you by thinking in the previous way, because our minds are wired to think that way. Our minds are literally wired to connect the two. That's why it's so difficult for many people to break through into this ability to think in probabilities and to break into this threshold of consistency. Is because we're working in some cases against natural wiring. It is natural for our minds to say, if this is what happened the last time, if the circumstances are identical or similar this time, then the same thing is going to happen. What I'm saying to you is that you have to step into an exercise where you consciously disconnect the two. In other words, your whole purpose is to disconnect this now moment from what happened the last time. Because there is no connection. The reality is there's no connection. That's the truth. You just can't let your mind think that there is a connection. There is no connection between the outcome of this now moment opportunity with what happened the last time, even though the variables that are getting you into this trade or identifying this opportunity are identical. That creates quite a paradox for our brains, okay? That's why people can understand the nature of probabilities. They can understand them, but they can't function from that perspective. You have to train your mind to function from that perspective. That's what separates everyone from the pros. Okay? You have to train your mind to disconnect. Don't let yourself think that there's any connection between now and what happened the last time. Because the reality is there is none. There really isn't. I don't care how identical it looks. You can use the same mathematical formulas and criteria in those formulas that apply to market data and come up with these patterns, but I guarantee you the traders that are operating in the market now are not the same traders, identically at least not the same traders as the ones that operated the last time. Therefore, there's no possible way that there could be a connection between now and then. There's just no possible way. When you disconnect, when you make that disconnection, okay, you won't perceive market information as threatening. You'll eliminate the potential to make a trading error, and you will be aspiring to trade without fear in a carefree state of mind. Now that you understand that your technical methodology does not tell you what will happen next on a trade-by-trade basis, in this section, I will take you through a step-by-step process that will integrate the principles of consistency as a functional part of your trading personality. Up to this point, we've talked about how we get into this mindset, about resolving to think in certain ways, but this is learning how to disconnect. In other words, learning how to circumvent that natural mechanism in our mind that automatically connects things, connects similar events, this now moment opportunity, this now moment event with something that's in our mind as a memory. If there's enough, if there's enough similarity there, it'll tap us into a state of mind that's identical to our memories, as opposed to what might be available in the now moment, which may be very different than what we think that it is. I mean, that's where we have relationship problems, communication problems. It's like this connect mechanism really does cause us a lot of problems. It really does, because in many cases, a lot of the pain and heartache that we feel in our lives is not connected at all with what's really happening in that moment, but you wouldn't be able to convince ourselves, or no one would be able to convince us, or wouldn't be able to convince ourselves that what we weren't experiencing in that moment wasn't real, because what we were experiencing was the energy. It was the fear, the confidence, the dissatisfaction, the betrayal. The energy of it is real, that you can't say this is not what's happening. But the problem is that the interpretation of the information that tapped us into the state of mind, and the connection that our mind automatically made from this now moment to some memory in the past, could be, like I said, completely erroneous. When you look at the very nature of the universe and the way it exists, there is no possible way that any moment could ever duplicate itself. No two moments are ever alike, ever. And could never be. Because if you just look at it, if you look at physical reality, it's constructed of atoms and molecules, and those atoms and molecules are in constant motion. They are in constant motion. For two moments to ever duplicate themselves, it means that all the atoms of all the molecules would have to be in the exact same spot they were in some previous moment right now. And that ain't going to happen. So when you really get right down to it, every moment is really unique. Every moment in the environment is really unique. But our minds don't process information that way. Every moment in the market is genuinely and truly unique. But our minds don't process it that way. We have to train our minds to process it that way if we want to make ourselves the casino. If we want to put ourselves in the situation where we are the casino, then we got to get our minds to process information in a different way. Richard had a comment that I thought was really good.
We tend to associate with a winning trade or a losing trade. That when we do suffer a loss, we tend to think of ourselves as a loser, instead of that is just a trade that turned out a loss.
Right.
And when we do get a winning trade, we think, well, I'm a winner. So you get caught up in the emotion of it instead of looking at it, that was a bad trade, this was a good trade. It has nothing to do with whether or not you're a winner or a loser.
Richard, have you ever played the slots?
No.
Never?
Well, yes.
Why couldn't you say that?
Yes,
go ahead.
Not anymore, because
no,
I understand.
No, did I say have you ever played the slots?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When the tumblers didn't come up with any kind of a jackpot, did you think of yourself as a loser?
No.
Why?
Because I know that the slot machine is rigged against me.
Well, okay, but did you think there's any possibility of ever winning?
Absolutely, because I did get some. But I eventually ended up with an empty pocket.
But in other words, you walked into it with the belief that on any particular time that you pushed the button that there was a random outcome.
Correct.
You knew that, right? And so therefore you didn't think of yourself as a loser.
Correct.
Have you ever thought of yourself as a loser when you had a losing trade?
Yes.
And what would be the reason?
Because I lost.
No, because you didn't believe that there was a random outcome, right? If someone told you from the very beginning that whatever outcomes that you experience from any methodology that you picked to define an edge were random, would you be thinking about this completely differently?
It makes a big difference. Absolutely.
Yeah. So in other words, you wouldn't have the same emotional problems that you might have with the kind of errors and everything else that goes along with trading with fear if someone would have just said to you, you know what, there's a random outcome. Even though it's a pattern and it doesn't make sense and it creates a paradox for our minds, we got a pattern that produces a random outcome. If you believe that there was a random outcome, where would the emotions come from?
They would certainly diminish, if not
well, they
go
wouldn't
away.
be. I don't think they'd be anywhere at all, would they?
Go away, yes.
No, I'm saying if you just right from the very start, what would you have to associate with? If it's a random outcome, then you know that you're not wrong, right?
Correct.
So there wouldn't be anything to associate the outcome with any kind of interpretation that could end up causing you to feel some sort of emotional pain.
You're right.
All we're trying to do is get to that place now, even though you've had all this backlog of experience telling you otherwise. That's where we want to get to. How are we going to get there? We're going to create an exercise. Remember the 5-mile rule? Okay, we're going to do the 5-mile rule in a trading exercise. Why are we going to do the exercise? You remember we have to have clarity of intent. What is our desire? Our desire is to become a consistently successful trader, one where I can generate an income I can rely on. Okay? And so we are going to actually trade for a new reason. We're going to stay focused in the process of trading as opposed to the outcome. The typical trader is obsessed with the outcome of a trade. The professional trader is focused in the process of trading and letting the outcomes take care of themselves. As a matter of fact, the best traders that I've ever encountered love the process of trading. The typical trader, on the other hand, either has no awareness of the actual process of trading or really doesn't like the process of trading, but they're addicted to or obsessed with the outcome. So you have to make up your mind, and everyone in this room at some point in their lives, for some reason, has decided to make up their mind about something, and when you have, you got results. I know everyone has had that experience. You've made up your mind with so much desire, so much clarity of intent, and with absolute sincerity that you got the desired result. So I'm saying that if you make up your mind to trade for a new reason, the reason is the acquisition of skills as opposed to the outcome or how much money you're making, you will acquire those skills, and then you'll find that the outcomes just take care of themselves. If you've paper traded or tested your methodology to the point where you have confidence that you have something that can generate consistent results, then you can do this exercise. If you haven't, then you're going to have to do that first. You're going to have to plan your trades. In other words, you're going to have to take your methodology and determine a given set of rigid variables, because what we're going to do is set up a trading exercise with just a simple 25 trade or 20 trade sample size. In other words, what you're going to say is that I am willing to invest in the development of these skills, the skill of learning to trade without fear, learning to think in probabilities. Because when you learn to think in probabilities, the fear will go away. And so what I essentially have to do is convince myself. I have to purposefully step into an experience where I am convinced, where I literally convince myself that these principles are true. Now, they sound true to you. They might resonate as the truth. But you have to keep in mind that you might have a backlog of any number of experiences that would support beliefs that would argue otherwise. Because I could say to you that if I set up or you set up an exercise where you said, okay, I've got a particular set of variables that when they appear in the market, that is my edge, and that my edge will produce, let's say, even 60% winning trades. And you don't even have to have 60%. You can have 50% and still make consistent money, as long as what you have to risk to find out if it works is, a third or a half of what you normally get when the trade does work in terms of profits. But if we set this exercise up so that there's no wiggle room, there is no wiggle room. What I mean by wiggle room is that the variables, the criteria that you use are absolutely rigid, black and white. They're either present or they are not. That's the only decision you have to make. In other words, if you do it in terms of lights, whatever lights you're going to use, whatever time frame, the lights you're going to use in whatever time frame, they are either on or they're not. And if they're on, you are obligated to take the trade. And what you're going to say to yourself is that in this, whatever criteria or plan that you set up is, I am not going to take just the next trade. I am going to take the next 20 trades. You are committing yourself to taking the next 20 trades of the occurrence of your edge. You will know in advance, based on testing and paper trading, exactly the optimum amount that you have to risk. In other words, what your risk is on each trade, and it's not going to be a varied amount. It's going to be a specific amount, whether it's in terms of dollars or distance. It will be a specific amount so that you know exactly how much each trade is going to potentially could cost you. And it should really be set up as a rigid profit potential too. In other words, I don't want you making subjective decisions as to about how far you're going to let the market go in your favor. So if you can get a set of variables, well, let's say you even 2 to 1 or even 1.5 to 1, 1.5 to 1, meaning that if I have to risk 1 point of something, even if it's, let's say, in stocks, if I have to risk $1 to make that my particular set of variables, my entry variables, will get me into a trade where if I risk $1, I'll get $2 60% of the time or 50% of the time. Then that's what you do. You do 2 to 1. There are trading methodologies that can be even the opposite. You can even go 2 to 1 here, meaning you can risk 2 to get 1. But in these cases, the trade has to be 80 or 90% correct. You can do it any percentages you want as long as it is fixed. There is no wiggle room. There is no subjective decision making whatsoever. Am I really clear about this? There is no subjective decision making whatsoever. Go ahead.
The big things in expectancy or in trading with risk-reward ratio is you don't know which trade is going to be the winning trade.
Correct.
And typically you try to let your winning trade get stopped out on your winning trades. But what you're saying to us for this exercise is that we take a fixed stop. I understand the fixed risk, but a fixed essential profit stop.
You know what? If you can set it up as a trailing stop, if you can set your trailing stops up where you're not making any kind of subjective decision, you can do that too.
So it doesn't matter as long as it's defined.
If you're sophisticated enough to do that, then yes. Okay. Most traders in these situations are not. That's why I make it real easy. Okay. As long as you're not making any decisions. So in other words, what you're saying is that if the market goes X number of points in my favor, I move my trailing stop up to a certain percentage below where the market is right now. And you don't move that unless you get stopped out or it moves up another gradient or whatever. Another, what am I thinking? Standard like deviation beyond. Yeah, okay, whatever you're using, okay? Yeah, if you can do that, that's fine. I just want all the variables to be completely and absolutely fixed. Okay? And then you fixed all these variables, and so you say to yourself, I'm going to take the next 20 trades. Not just the next one, but the next 20. No matter what. No matter what. Now that means that you have to be prepared based on the amount that you have to risk. You have to be prepared to take 20 losses in a row. The likelihood of that happening is about as remote as getting 20 wins in a row. But the point is that the dollar value of the risk of each trade multiplied by 20, you have to be able to afford. So you've got to set it up that way. You've got to set it up so that you can afford the dollar value of the risk of taking 20 losing trades in a row. Because what you're saying to yourself, if taking the risk, if taking the 20 trades in a row, losing 20 trades in a row based on the amount of shares that you trade. So for an example, if the standard amount of shares that you trade would say that, if I had lost 20 trades in a row based on how much I've got to risk, it's going to be $5,000. You say to yourself, you know what, I don't want to spend $5,000 on this. Then don't. But say, I'm truly willing to spend, let's say, $1,000. Then set it up where the amount of contracts or shares that you trade correspond to adding each one up where it comes up to $1,000, even if it means just trading 10 shares at a time. Go down to a level where you're completely comfortable with the dollar value. You have to be completely comfortable. And then, when you get an occurrence of your edge, put the trade on and see what happens. And if it turns out to be a winner, you think, oh, hey, yeah, Mark Douglas, hey, good, hey, this is all right, okay? Yeah. So this one turns out to be a winner, and maybe this one turns out to be a winner. And maybe, well, this one's a loser. You think, okay, I can handle that. And this one's a loser? Uh-oh, and this one's a loser. Now we've got 3 losers in a row. I have rarely met a trader who doesn't have a problem with the next trade after 3 losers in a row. You made the commitment to take every single trade. When the next one comes up and your mind is screaming, no, it's a loser. Remember how our minds are wired to think? Our minds are wired to think that way, but that is not the truth. The truth is, your methodology, the mathematical formula, does not know what the outcome of that trade is going to be. And neither do you. You got to take it anyway. And see, and when these occurrences, when you purposefully put yourself into a situation where you're confronting these conflicting beliefs, because that's what's rearing its head. This is any different than me saying, I want to go run, and then after that program, or it's too cold, it's too hot, it's raining, whatever. It's the exact same thing. You put the trade on anyway, and it turns out to be a winner. You are convincing yourself that you don't know what's going to happen next. Because you created an experience that directly contradicts what you thought was true. You actually created an experience that directly contradicts what you thought was true. And the more of these you run into and the more times you do it, all of a sudden, you're not thinking the old way anymore. You are truly and genuinely learning how to think in probabilities. You are integrating thinking in probabilities as a core part of your trading personality. You may understand the nature of probabilities, but now you're being able to function from a probabilistic perspective. Because what you're going to do is you're going to do this exercise until you can do it flawlessly. You are going to do this exercise, and you do the first one, and if you don't execute your trades completely flawlessly, then do it again. Now, at the end of a sample size, if you don't like the outcome, if you don't like the results, meaning the amount of money that you made, or even lost for that matter, because that's possible, you don't like the bottom line, you can tweak your variables. You just can't do it in the middle of a sample size. If you want to change your variables at the end of a sample size, you're free to do it. You cannot do it in the middle of one. Cannot. Absolutely cannot. You will keep doing this exercise until when? What? What? Well, yes, but there's something else I want to get. Until when? How do you know you've arrived? How do you know you've actually arrived, that you've changed?
That you can freely and easily put in the trade.
That's right. You can there's no conflicting energy anymore. It doesn't occur to you to not do it. It doesn't even enter your brain. You don't even get the thought. You get a signal, you put on the trade. You get a signal, you put on the trade. It's like then it's who you are. You guys with me on this? You managed to actually work through all that conflicting energy, and you've changed. You're a different person. Because the competing and conflicting thoughts don't even enter your consciousness. They're not there anymore. Because it's not who you are anymore. Any questions about this? Is this making sense to everybody? If you're really sincere about wanting to generate a consistent income, you'll do this exercise. And if you're not, you won't. And you might not be ready to, and that's all right. Whenever you're ready, you'll do it. But this will work. This will work. 1 second. Because you are actively stepping into an experience where your desire is to change the way that you think. Instead of avoiding the confrontation, you are actually embracing the confrontation. Big difference. You are embracing the confrontation. Because the more that you embrace it, the faster it dissipates. Go ahead.
Can you speak a little bit about going from paper trading to real money? I know there's a difference, and you would say you were trying a new strategy or something that you were tweaking. You would do paper first, and what would you consider it? I mean, if you would you look at each trade, and if you executed it flawlessly, and you say you generated money, and then you went to real money. How would you decide, I guess, if you lost money, to answer my own question here, in other words, what would you expect the transition to be?
Well, it's going to depend on the individual. One, you're always going to want a paper trade. If you've got a new set of variables that you're working with, you're always going to want to paper trade it to the point where you're confident that you can get good results. That doesn't mean that you can execute good results. It means that the potential is there. You want to know the potential is there, correct? Once you know that the potential is there, then you move. See, the paper trading part is only to find out what variables in the market work in relationship to, like market movement in relationship to the formula, okay? Now we're working on our brain, okay? That's the first step. The second step is that do I think in a way that's consistent that I can extract the maximum potential out of the methodology? That means executing flawlessly. So what you do is you set this exercise up in a way that what'll dictate it is how much you're comfortable with how much you're comfortable with the dollar amount of losing every single trade. That's how you know how to set it up. That's really key. It really is. It means that if you have to trade one share, then if that's all you're comfortable with losing, based on the dollar value of how much you have to risk on each trade. That's based on your analysis, by the way. Then do it. And then when you can execute one share flawlessly over a sample size or one or two sample sizes, then go to 10 shares and see how you do. And if you can't do 10 shares comfortably and flawlessly, go back to 5. You're just building skills. If you get your mind out of the money, out of the outcome part, and focus on building the skills, once those skills are there, you're going to make all the money you want. That makes sense, doesn't it? Do this exercise and you won't believe how things will change until you actually change, and it'll be amazing. Do the exercise. So does anybody else have any questions about how to set this exercise up? How long are you going to do the exercise? If you set it up and do it, how long are you going to do it? What's the criteria?
20 trades.
I understand. How many 20 trade sample size or 25 trade sample size exercises are you going to do?
Until there's no conflicting.
That's right. Till there's no conflicting and competing thoughts. Until you can do it flawlessly. Until you can do it. Until it's like just a part of who you are. It wouldn't occur to you not to do anything other than what your rules say. It just wouldn't even occur to you. It doesn't even enter your brain. And I guarantee you, at that point, you will be thinking in probabilities. You will be trading without fear. You will be trading from a carefree state of mind. That's the payoff. You'll be thinking like a pro. So you want to resolve to focus your efforts on developing specific trading skills, and consistent profits will naturally flow as a byproduct of the mastery of these skills. The most successful traders love the process of trading, whereas a typical trader usually ignores the process because he's obsessively focused on the outcome.
On these trades, you keep saying, do the process, and until you do it perfectly. Right. What are some of the pitfalls? I mean, when I trade, I don't really think that I'm doing too much wrong. So I'm curious what all can go wrong on a trade other than typing it in wrong.
All the things all the errors that I mentioned earlier, like not predefining errors. If you're not doing stuff wrong, that's fine. Don't more. Don't add stuff. Yeah, don't make it. Yeah, don't. If you're doing all right, then you're doing fine. Okay. I don't want to give you the impression that there has to be anything more there. It's, Okay, resolve to commit the 5 fundamental truths about the nature of trading as core beliefs of your trading personality. Those 5 fundamental truths are: anything can happen. Is that true or not? Every moment is unique. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. An edge is nothing more than an indication of a higher probability of one thing happening over another. Okay. Is there a random distribution between wins and losses on any given set of variables that define an edge? Yes, absolutely. Do we need to know what's going to happen next to produce a consistent income? No. You see, so if you find yourself, as you're doing this exercise, with conflicting and competing thoughts, pay attention to what you're thinking. Pay attention to what you're about to do as a result of what you're thinking, and then refocus on what you want to believe. I want to believe that anything can happen, that there's a random distribution that I don't need to know, and just stay focused on these particular beliefs, and do the best you can, and keep on doing it until it just becomes a part of who you are.
Sounds like a meditation.
It's right. You're absolutely right. It's like a meditation. That's right, your mantra. Put them up on your wall or by your computer screen. Because they're all true. Resolve to continually reinforce a belief in your ability to be a consistently successful trader by adopting the trader's creed. By the way, these two things are in Trading in the Zone. The 5 fundamental truths and the trader's creed are both in Trading in the Zone. The trader's creed: I am a consistent winner. In other words, remember the belief that I put up that I am a runner? Remember that? I said when I actually became a runner, that belief compelled me to express myself in a way that was consistent with that belief? Well, what we want to do is install a belief that says, I am a consistent winner. And the subset beliefs that you have to make this true will automatically compel you to act or behave in a way that's consistent with that belief. Why are you a consistent winner? Because I objectively identify my edges. Objectively, meaning no rationalizations, justifications, or building cases. I know what criteria defines my edge, and it's either present or it's not. I predefine the risk of every trade. Wouldn't even think about getting into a trade without doing that. Now, that doesn't mean, because who brought that up earlier? No, he's not here right now. That doesn't mean that I always put a stop in the market. But I trade subjectively. That doesn't mean I actually enter a stop. But I guarantee you that whatever price I picked as my risk point, I never violate not getting out at that price. The market hits my price, I get out. That doesn't mean I've entered a stop in the market beforehand. But I could do that. I don't have a problem with that. It wouldn't even occur to me not to do otherwise. I'm a consistent winner because I completely accept the risk, or I'm willing to scale back or let go of the edge. Meaning I'm completely free of conflict about the amount of money I'm willing to spend to find out if this trade is going to work. If you're not completely sure, or let's say completely without conflict about the amount of money that it could take to find out if this trade is going to work, then scale back to a level that you're comfortable. But the important thing is participate. Even if you have to scale back again to, like I said, one share, at least you're participating at a level where you've got some money at risk. I act on my edges without reservation or hesitation. I am a consistent winner because I act on my edges without reservation or hesitation. I'm a consistent winner because I continually monitor my susceptibility to making trading errors. And how do I do that? I keep journals. I pay myself as the market makes money available to me. I subscribe to a philosophy of scaling out of positions. I like to divide my position up into fractions and scale out in quarters or thirds. That way I'm continually making myself a winner. As the market makes money available, I'm extracting money out of the market because I don't know how far the market's going to go in my favor. And what I have is I usually have at least a quarter or a third on in case it just does something that, I could have never anticipated. And by the time I've got just the last third on or last quarter on anyway, I've got a trailing stop, or at least a place in my mind where I get out if it retraces back to my not far beyond my entry point anyway from that point on. And the last one, I never violate these principles of success. Well, what do you think, guys? Any questions? Get them now. Go ahead.
Do you ever scale in?
No, I know a lot of traders who do. I just don't. I'm not saying that just because I don't doesn't mean that I don't think it's fine. I just don't have a particular methodology where I scale in. That's all. I get in all at once. Anything else? Here's your chance to get on the DVD. Come on. Don't miss out.
Violate and walk on water.
What's that?
Never violate and walk on water.
Well, no. Why? What do you mean? That you think? Well, what do you? Yeah, you don't have to. You can get to a. Go ahead.
And never violate. The never is it that they said never say never.
Well, let's put it this way: you can at least aspire to never violate the principle. Yeah, that's good, but that's a good point. Yeah, you're making a good point. You really are. I appreciate that. You can aspire to never violate these principles of success.